Welcome to the podcast where the last podcast I did was 2 years ago about Infinity War. Hopefully, I can make this a regular thing because I've been thinking about for pretty much for years, way before this channel was created. It was actually a podcast channel. Really, believe it or not, I deleted all of them because we were just fucking babbling about nothing. But anyway, in this little, I would like to call it discussion or let's talk, is about The Staircase on Netflix and The People v. O.J. Simpson, both on Netflix, and just my thoughts about the things they explored in the series and my afterthought overall. So if you have the time, I have no idea how long this will go. Probably not too long, but I want to talk about the celebration of ignorance, or well, that's what I'm calling this episode at least, and how I view the whole fucking the jury system. Is I have quite a lot of things to say about it, but the reason that I didn't make a video about this is that I don't know how to. I try to write for a cohesive video essay on the subject about the staircase leading up to the People versus OJ, and how I interpret the whole thing and how I think about the whole thing. I wrote about maybe a page or two, and then I just kind of gave up because there are just so many things so scattered that I don't think I can fit into one short video and make it somehow flow well. I don't think I can do that. So I decided to make a podcast. I think it's probably better to have a conversation, and if people want to listen to it, fine. And this is an opportunity for me to get whatever I want to say out there anyway. So I guess a spoiler tag right now, if you don't want to know anything about the series The Staircase and The People v. O.J. Simpson on Netflix. If you don't want anything about them, go watch them and come back. They are a real life event though, so it's as easy as looking it up on Google. So I guess the structure of this little podcast is that I want to make a really surface level review on how I think about the series, technically how I feel about it, and then we'll dive into the what it talks about and how I think about it. So The Staircase is a docu-series currently on Netflix that covers the real-life court case between the state of North Carolina and Michael Peterson over the death of his wife, Kathleen Peterson. At first, I was just shocked. I was baffled by how they can stretch the court case to over 10 hours, 11 hours of material, because I didn't know anything about The Staircase. And when I looked it up on, I think I just stumbled across it on Netflix. I click into it, and then there are 13 episodes, and I was like, bro, how can you milk this to 13 episodes and fucking 50 minutes each? How? Why? I almost didn't want to touch it. But then as I watched it further and further into the series, this is a trial that started in 2001 and lasted until 16 years later in 2017. The documentarian had over 600 hours of footage to work with, and just the amount of that and it is insane to me. With that being said, I'll be waiting for the uncut version, the 600 hours version, because they only showed 11 hours. No, I'm just kidding. But I think they tell the story really well. In regards with the objectivity, that's another side of things. But I think for what it is, of telling a story through the perspective of the defendant and kind of explore how the justice system works, I think it did its job. I think it's a really good series in regards to that. And what is it about? If you don't know, and somehow you're still here and you don't give a fuck about that spoiler tag, in December 2001, Michael Peterson made a 911 call to report an accident in which his wife Kathleen had fallen down a flight of stairs and tragically passed away. And once the paramedics, investigators, and popos arrive at the scene, one of the longest criminal trials in North Carolina history is about to commence. I'm not here to explain or give an overview of the series. You can do that by simply watching it, but These are just some of the things I got out of it, since the case is filled with bits and pieces of information, and it's really up to which you value more and most importantly, the most, I guess, if that makes sense. And by the way, if you watch my quarantine watch list day 140, you know that I gave the series a score of 4 out of 5. I think it's a really good series. But I want to dig into the objectivity of things, how the justice system works, what I think about it, and whatever. Yeah, you get it. So I want to start off by saying how the staircase aged. I think it aged really well. Because first of all, the justice system has not changed to this day. I don't believe so. The second of all is the idea of context. If you look at episode 6, at around the 20-minute mark, I have my notes here, but I can't really specific pinpoint it. But it is a conversation between the two daughters, Martha and Margaret, I think. In episode 6, around the 20-minute mark, they talk about context. And I thought that's so interesting because this conversation supposedly took place almost 2 decades ago, and it's still relevant to this day. And it was way before social media, Twitter, Instagram, and anything like that was even in the picture. So I thought the court case kind of sparked this whole thing that is still relevant to this day. What they said is that basically how you can take something out of context and blow it up on a poster and whatever, and sensationalize it, and then people will just take it in face value. I'll insert a clip right here. You don't have to look at it, but you just listen.
Well, can you imagine they could take your whole life as of right now, take everything that you've ever done out of context, and blow it up on a huge poster, and bringing people to talk about it and have experts talk about it, and it's disgusting. I mean, they could do that to anyone.
You can't judge someone by what the media points out as their shortcomings,
In regards how it fit within the court case, I guess, is that the idea of bringing evidence and seemingly irrelevant, I mean, that is still debatable and arguable, but let's just, for the sake of the argument, seemingly irrelevant evidence into the court is the fact that Michael Peterson is bisexual, and he had some sexual, I guess, intimacy with other people other than his own wife, and how that evidence can maybe affect the jury, and how if it's ethical or if it's a good idea to bring to court. You can bring up a lot of shit that you've done in the past and then, blow it out of context or whatever, and then still have people attacking you to this day. And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with cancel culture. It's kind of related if you really think about it. It's still the same thing, but it's just being given another name. And that's one thing. Another thing that I want to touch on is how people view the justice system as a whole. I think in the last episode, especially in that last episode, this part of the conversation is where it's highlighted. If I have my notes correctly, Candace, in the last episode, specifically stated, quote, "Innocent don't plead guilty," end quote. That's what she said. And I feel like that it's such, I don't know how to I don't even know how to describe it. It's really kind of stupid, but you also get a glimpse of how people view the justice system. I think I've seen a video somewhere, I don't know where, but people asking around if OJ did it 20 years later, if they think OJ did it. There are some people who said, you know what, the court said he's not guilty, so I'm not gonna look any deeper than that. He's probably not guilty because the court says is not guilty. And I think that goes into the how people see the justice system as the end all be all thing, where if the court says this, then it must be right. But it's really not. It is about sensationalism and the jury system, which is another thing I want to talk about. It's just so easy to corrupt. It's a system that is outdated. And I think I did some research, and by research, I did a fucking Google search, and the first thing I saw is the celebration of ignorance. That's how they describe the jury system. And I think, you know what? That's kind of true. And well, I think I'll get into how it relates to the staircase and, you know, the OJ case a little bit later. But I just want to get this the staircase section out of the way. And David Rudolph, I want to talk about him. He's a badass. He's kind of a badass. And dramatically speaking, I feel really bad for him, to be honest, because he came off as a guy who really do believe in the system. And I feel like that's not an odd thing to say, because everyone who is a lawyer or is a judge or somewhat involved in the system, I think they still believe in the system. That goes to cops, police, or whatever. They're in the field because they believe in it. And I think it's not any different in this case. And what got me is when the verdict came out the first time, and how it completely kind of ruined David Rudolph, because all he tried to do was prove a thing that we'll talk about it later. It's called the reasonable doubts. And in my opinion, he did a really good job at presenting a case, presenting a reasonable doubt. But the verdict still came the other way. So people are starting to realize, but whether that's going to change anything or not, that doesn't really matter. But I feel like more and more people are starting to realize how corruptible the whole thing is. And then after that, I want to talk slightly about the daughters, the Martha and Margaret. They had quite some screen time in my memory, with them talking about whether they think their dad did it. Of course they don't think they did it, but the thing is, on the other hand, maybe that this is my theory. I'm not saying this as a fact or anything. Maybe the daughters just don't want to see it. They had a rough past, as the docuseries presented. They really home in on, okay, where this family is coming from. Who are these characters? Who are these people? And they had some rough past. And I just thought maybe the daughters just didn't want to fucking believe it, because it will shatter their fucking world if that is the case. That's why they're defending it. And I feel like this really reminded me, this whole saga, by the way, like the staircase and the OJ Simpson thing, the whole saga just reminded me of When They See Us, which is also on Netflix, created by Ava DuVernay. It's a really good series. It's a little too long for my taste, but good series. And 12 Angry Men is one of the best films ever. But they all, I guess 12 Angry Men specifically for the reasonable doubts part of this conversation, and When They See Us about the narrative, because the people, the authorities, that's a better way of putting it, the authorities who the people are supposed to put their trust in are already creating this narrative to fit their imagination, to put certain people behind bars, and no matter what you do or what you say, you're gonna lose, because it's corrupted from within. And I think that's what When They See Us explored the best. So I guess that's all for the staircase portion of the thing. Yeah, good series. Is it worth the time? It's about 11 hours. Is it worth it? I think it is. To be honest, at first I was really skeptical. I was like, how the fuck are you gonna milk it? But they kept it interesting. They kept it intriguing. There's always, I guess there's always something that is stopping the defendant. There's always, the case just gets worse and worse for these guys, and you can't help but just watch what happens next. Really bingeable too. Now, I just want to make it clear though. Did Michael do it? I have no idea. I just want to make that clear. I have no idea if he did it or not. But in the context of, if Michael Peterson has been proven to be not guilty beyond reasonable doubt, I think he is. So I want to move on to the People v. OJ Saga is also on Netflix by FX. I think distributed by Netflix. I don't even know what the fuck happened with that one, but I watched it. Did I like the series personally? On a technical level, no, I don't think it's that good, to be honest. But I guess it shows the case. It presented the court case pretty well in regards with perspective, because I don't think the show picked a side, and I think that's probably one of the best thing out of the show. You see both sides. They never depict OJ as a guilty guy, and they never did it the other way around either. So I think that's probably the best way to pitch this thing. But on the other hand, on a technical level, I'm not a big fan of it. The People v. O.J. Simpson is the first season of American Crime Story, of the FX True Crime Anthology television series American Crime Story. The season debuted on February 2nd, 2016. It revolves around the O.J. Simpson murder case and is based on the Jeffrey Toobin's book, I think, The Run of His Life, The People v. O.J. Simpson, 1997. It was critically acclaimed, and when it came out, a lot of people were all over this shit. There's always also a second season, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, which I don't think I'll watch, based on the first one. It is directed by... Who is it directed by? Ryan Murphy. Look, if I'm doing a review of the show, I would say that the show is way too fucking flashy for the sake of being flashy. There's really no point of doing things that he did directorial wise. Wait, what? I lost my train of thought. There's so unnecessary the thing that he did directorial wise. Because they're not for the story. They're just purely for the visual and for the sake of being fancy. And in that aspect, I don't like it at all. But I think it did the job. At least it got me involved in the court case, and I think that's all it needs. So if you don't know, like I did, I never grew up in America. So O.J. Simpson is a name that I heard a lot of times for the time that I am in America, since 2000 something. I heard his name a lot. I never knew who he was until he kind of resurfaced in recent years when he is on Twitter. Hello to the world. It's just such a memeable account, and I that's when I started to know, O.J. Simpson is a known murderer or something. I never looked into it. I don't know if he did it or not. I just know about this character. And then so recently I've been really into watching true crimes and mysteries and bullshits, and I just happened, you know what, let's just watch The People versus OJ. It's been called the trial of the century because of the shit that is involved. It started off with a simple murder, double homicide case, which the prosecutor seems as a fucking 100% winning case. But then it kind of took a turn when Johnny Cochran, defendant's attorney, came into the play. He fucking masterfully turned the whole thing into a race thing. Now, for context, this happened right after the riot, right after the Rodney King riot. So race thing was a huge thing. And then Johnny Cochran just turned turn a double homicide to a race thing. But from a lawyer standpoint, that's a fucking genius move. But I feel like, come on, with all the facts, with all the evidence, I think it's pretty obvious if he did it or not. But that's not the point. And I want to talk about the casting. I thought the casting is brilliant. Everyone looked the part, acted the part. Sarah Paulson, god damn, is she good in this entire series. I mean, her acting really shined in, I think, episode 3. Incredible stuff. I also want to talk about Sterling K. Brown as Christopher Darden. Also, fantastic performance. He looked almost exactly like the guy too. Yeah, fantastic performance. And I think I really love how Sterling K. Brown and Sarah Paulson play off each other, because they had a kind of a storyline together. That's all I gotta leave it. The judge is another one that when I looked up the real life photo, I'm like, bro, Judge Ito looked exactly like in real life, played by Kenneth Choi. God damn, they look similar. Jesus Christ, the beard, Jesus. Yeah, I think the casting and everything on point. Just I'm not a big fan of the directing stuff and whatever. If you know about the trial, if you know about the series really at all, I really don't have much to say here. It's the famous line of if it don't fit, you must acquit. That famous line just came from this trial and what have you. But I'm sure everyone listening to this probably know about O.J. Simpson, so I'm not gonna cover it further. I want to jump straight to the point. The biggest point, I guess, of this entire video is the idea of reasonable doubts. And I want to kick off this section with a little clip of David Rudolph talking about reasonable doubts. I saw a video all these years later. It was published on 2018, so 1 year after the second staircase was released, because there are two parts. The first part being the first, there are two parts of the story. The second part came out way later, but the point is, this one came out a year after the second staircase. This is a video about David Rudolph talking about the case, talking about the series, and he's still insisting on the things that he brought to the court. And there's this awesome clip about reasonable doubts, and let me show you this clip. You don't have to look at it again, it's just audio.
Way in the back.
Okay.
Have you heard from the judge years later how he felt about allowing those two pieces of evidence in?
Well, you all heard from the judge at the end of the documentary. And like I said, the judge was a friend of mine. Still a friend of mine. I've never stopped talking with him. But, I thought it was really courageous of him to actually, on camera, admit that he had made a mistake. And indeed, he went further than that and admitted that he had, having listened to all the evidence, a reasonable doubt. And at the end of the day, that's what this case is about. You all can argue that he's guilty, you can argue he's innocent. The bottom line is, was there proof beyond a reasonable doubt when you take all the evidence into account? When you take into account, we heard about 650 hours and things left out. There was a lot of evidence that we liked that was left out.
So yeah, as you can hear, I think both cases, the People versus O.J. Simpson and North Carolina versus Michael Peterson, both relies heavily on reasonable doubts, if there is one. The jury's job is to presume innocent until guilt is proved beyond a reasonable doubt. I think let's just whether if that's right, if that's a good idea, I don't know. I'm not that fucking smart, but for the sake of this video and the things that I'm about to say and about the system, let's just put it in place. Let's just get that out of the way. This is how the system is built on. You have 12 people come in, and they decide if someone is innocent or not. Well, that's a bad way of putting it. If they're guilty or not, I think that's a better way of putting it, because the court rules not guilty instead of innocent. So, and this really reminded me again of 12 Angry Men. The entire fucking movie of 12 Angry Men is them debating if it has a reasonable doubts, and it turns out no spoilers, but that's what the movie is about. And how it relates to the staircase and O.J. Simpson is that I think in the staircase, the defendant did a really good job at presenting a reasonable doubt. When you see this case and take in all the facts and everything that is presented, in my opinion, I think there is a reasonable doubt to acquit Michael Peterson. If I were the 1 of 12 in that juror, I would probably vote not guilty. because I think there is probably reasonable doubt. Now, I'm not saying that he didn't do it or anything like that. I'm just saying based on the system and how the jury works, he's probably not guilty by that standard. Okay? And I think that's probably the verdict that makes the most sense to me. And it is the same thing in the O.J. Simpson trial, where I think the prosecutor presented so much shit, so much, to a point where it's like, he fucking did it. He definitely fucking did it. Well, the DNA thing, and what I acknowledge it's not the most convincing way to prove someone's guilt back in those days, because people didn't really understand what DNA does and what it implies and whatever. But the prosecutor just brought out evidence after evidence and after evidence. And in the show, how they depict it, at least, is the defendant just turned and twisted everything into something else, into sensationalism, and it became a race thing. There's a fantastic scene in the O.J. Simpson series where this African American juror said, "I will never vote him guilty, never, no matter fucking what." And I feel like that just kind of made me cringe a little, to be honest. And I feel like it's probably time to talk about the celebration of ignorance. Is that how is this the system allowing 12 strangers, 12 people who know nothing about the case come in, and then have them make the decision whether the defendant is guilty or not? How is that the quote unquote justice? Both cases turn into something really ugly. They're trying to sway the juror with sensationalism. There's also a scene in episode 5 of The People v. OJ of, I think, Johnny Cochran talking about telling the jury a story instead of evidence. And I think that's such an idiotic thing that you can actually do in this system. 12 people. They can be super smart. They can be super dumb, but regardless, they have to be unanimous, and no matter how susceptible or how easily persuaded you are, or anything, how level-headed you are thrown into the mix, and then your vote counts just as much as the next person. So in a way, what frustrates me the most from what I learned from these two series, and the courtroom dramas I've been seeing in the past few years, is what I found is so frustrating is that it's not about proving something. It's not about evidence anymore. It's about who can tell the jury the better story. I feel like that's what frustrates me the most. Who can tell the better story? Who can touch people the most? What I also learned in the past few years on the internet is that people don't know how to think for themselves, that is. And especially on Twitter, people don't know how to think for themselves. Oh, people hate this, then I must hate it because everybody else hate them. People can't form their own opinions anymore because no one wants to be the odd one out, and everybody loves to hate things. And how it's kind of hard to say, but how is it that we are we are the ones who decide if someone is guilty or not? That is the thing that I don't understand. How is it up to us when we really don't know any better? Let's be honest here. We probably don't know any better. It's like, okay, we have complete trust in our civilians and our people, and we're gonna make you guys make the decision because we think that you are smart enough, but you have to make sure these people are fucking smart enough. Do I think the United States of America is doing well in that part? Hell no. Hell no. You if you want to make a system like this work, you better make sure that every fucking body is well educated, is level-headed, and it's not susceptible to sensationalism. And that's a hard thing to do, and that is exactly why the jury system in modern day don't work anymore. there are way too many people from different places, have different backgrounds, have different thinking. Like this whole thing about OJ is like, okay, how many white juror can we get to be in the jury? How many liberal people can we get into the jury for Michael Peterson? Right? It's all about that. How is picking jury a thing? That is another thing that I don't understand. Jury, let's just get it out of the way. Probably jury system should not be here in 2020. And I guess I said enough. Anything that it's revolving this whole thing, I don't think it's smart. I don't think it's smart. That's about it. That's about everything that I want to say. If I keep on going, it will just be me mumbling about the same shit and probably getting myself angry. So I'm going to stop there. I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you so much for listening to this little podcast that I make. Hopefully I can make it more, but I don't see it in the short term. I don't see it how I can keep this up unless, some crazy shit happen. But for now, I don't think I can keep it up, but hopefully I can make it a thing in the future. Go watch The Staircase if you're at this point and still haven't watched it. The Staircase and The People vs. OJ. The People v. OJ thing, you don't have to watch it if you know the case. It's not that good, to be honest. But The Staircase, I would recommend seeing it and thinking about how it relates to 2020 society. I think it delved deep. And I think it's interesting, to say the least. Some closing thoughts. I guess there's a owl theory in The Staircase that I thought was fucking kind of hilarious, but also, like kind of a head scratcher. Interesting to look into. And there's also a lot of behind the scenes that are apparently happening during the filming of The Staircase that was never brought up. So that's also interesting. So that'll be all. Thank you again so much for listening. I'll see you in the next video. Tell me what you think. Really, tell me what you think. I think I'm gonna get a lot of hate from this.
How many times have you seen blunt force trauma injuries with the head where you didn't have any of those injuries? Because I can tell you in North Carolina, there were 250 blunt force trauma autopsies done in the 10 years before, and there wasn't one. Not one.
I think that's probably a question better posed to the coroner, not to a...
No, I asked you because you prosecute these cases, so you see what the autopsies are, and you're the one who misrepresented the facts. So I'm asking you, can you give me an answer?
I have not tried any of those, but perhaps we could ask somebody who could give us some scientific, large enough variables so that you could actually find a pattern.
Yes, thanks for your evasiveness.
Okay.